You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, everybody, I'm Eric Vansel,
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
and we're your hosts for this show tonight. So tonight begins an 8-week cycle where we're going to be reviewing Star Wars Visions Presents The Ninth Jedi. In fact, we couldn't even cram all that onto the lower third that I got, so I just put like the Cliff's notes on there. But the point is that they dropped all 8 episodes. We're going to review them one at a time, like we pretty much always do on this show. And we're going to basically set it up. We're going to talk about it. We're going to go through each episode each week until we get to the end. And then that's pretty much how it's going to roll for like the next 8 weeks or whatever as we actually review this. So just to give everybody a little bit of background, Star Wars Visions, The Ninth Jedi, it's based on the Ninth Jedi short that I think was in like season. They had one that was in season 1, and then they had the sequel in season 3. And they decided to create this 8-episode miniseries on it. Production IG is the studio that actually produced it. Shunsuke Tada is the director. Mitsuyatsu Sakai is the writer. And so, again, this is another basic anime version of Star Wars, except this time actually makes a little bit more sense. It's picking up, like I said, Volume 1, The Ninth Jedi. And then, of course, that was The Ninth Jedi Child of Hope was Volume 3 episode that was basically the sequel. And, again, the premise is basically the Jedi are gone, or they're nearly gone. Galaxy is unstable. Kara, who is the main character, she's a little girl. She's part of a small Jedi group trying to rebuild it. And then in this episode, A New Threat, it's basically functioning as kind of the setup, right? It reintroduces us to the world that we saw in The Ninth Jedi and then its sequel. Establishes the danger, reminds us what Kara is fighting for, and begins shaping the larger conflict around the galaxy. So with that said, we're basically going to review this. Now, Ted Adam Green joins us. He has a comment already. He says, hot take, if there had never been any Star Wars ever before, this would be as good of an introduction to the galaxy as ever been done. More stuff in the first 30-minute episode than most movies. And yeah, I mean, the one nice thing that I will say, I enjoyed this. I mean, it was refreshing to actually watch Visions, and it makes sense. Like, right out the gate, right? No esoteric weirdness, no pretty visuals, but I have no idea what I'm watching. I mean, it actually, it made sense. This was, and again, I mean, that was something that pretty much was happening throughout each successive season of Visions, is that it got better, it started making more sense, but still, this is the first Vision project that's going to actually be a unified series where things progress from episode to episode, whereas in Visions up until this point, every episode is kind of like a one and done, and that's it. Where now we're actually setting up the story. So, I mean, overall, I actually really liked it. I like the characters in this. I like the villain. I like all that stuff. I mean, obviously, we're going to get into this, but that's so far overall thoughts. So give yours, and then, we can start getting into some of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about this is, to Ted Adams' point, is context. We know what's going on, pretty much on the onset of this thing, and that's always refreshing. Especially when it comes to Visions, because notorious for just dropping us in places and things are happening, and you're just like, what the heck is it? Am I not even watching? But this was good. And I'm glad that they're taking something that actually has real teeth, real story. The other one was Ronin, which a lot of people liked. But this one has more of a Star Wars feel to it. This is something that, and I could see why a lot of people are saying, like, if this goes well, this could be the new direction of Star Wars. Not necessarily with these characters, but the concept.
Mhm.
And that's what I want people to keep in mind as we discuss this tonight. It's the concept of what they're trying to show us. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's a great idea. There's a lot of different things. We'll get into those. Um, and you know how a lot of people are often saying, like, oh, these movies like Star Wars and maybe some of the Marvel stuff or whatever, it needs to be reflective of what, the world looks like today or the different issues of the day. Um, I think that this does it in a way where it's not on the nose, it's not beating yourself over the head with things, but it's a general concept of, hey, things aren't the same as it used to be. It's not so clear. It requires more thought. And that to me is fine. When you start being kind of like specific and itemizing or zeroing on certain things, I think that's where you run into the problem. But if you still keep it broad enough, keep those broad strokes that Star Wars is known for, you just change the brush. I think that's where you get something like this, and I think that's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, it works really, really well from that standpoint. Because you're right. I mean, the two big things from all of Visions, there's probably a couple episodes here and there that would have made a good launching point for a series. But I mean, primarily, yeah, it would be either the Ronin stories or the Ninth Jedi. And the problem with the Ronin stories is, like you said, I mean, you're going to be limited, right? It's probably going to match more the Mandalorian kind of a thing because you basically have this
Hmm.
lone Jedi, basically used to be a Sith. Um, and they could probably do something with it. And I know they did release that novel or whatever, which I have yet to read, honestly. But I mean, the character is compelling. But the nice thing about the Ninth Jedi is the entire like world that it sets up is compelling. It's not just anchored to one character. It basically has like a story that is really worth expounding on and really getting into. And so there's probably more meat on the bone for that. I mean, Dragonfly Mask joins us. He says, "Yeah, the Ninth Jedi doesn't break the ceiling. The Ronin broke the ceiling." I mean, I guess the other thing you could point out too is that with the Ronin, yeah, there were like that was a little bit more of like that what if kind of alternate universe Star Wars. Although I still think that there's a lot to mine there. I do agree that this is probably the better move. I mean, if you're gonna talk about it, right? Because, and this is where I think that it's really important when we get into this. This basically is starting to get into some of the same things that the proper canon is getting into, right? Because you are dealing with rebuilding the Jedi Order in some capacity. Whereas in the after the sequel trilogy, obviously, well, for Return of the Jedi, that hits, and then of course we know in between that and the Force Awakens, whether you're dealing with Legends or whether you're dealing with even the new canon, Luke goes to rebuild the Jedi Order, fails, and we all know the story from there. And now, of course, presumably it's going to fall on Rey to rebuild it. But this one isn't really beholden to any of that stuff, right? I mean, they can create this whole new thing, and I mean, it still works out because sure, I'm still not entirely. I don't remember like when this actually takes place. They said it. They told us. You remember?
What do you mean as far as
Like
like?
where in the canon it takes place, even though
Well,
it's
it's
not a
post.
canonical story. I know it's, but it's post
It's
something.
post sequel.
It is post sequel. All right.
Yeah.
So I mean, they could conceivably be doing this at the same time that you have like Rey doing it too, right? I mean, one's not necessarily beholden to the other. I mean, it's not just can the Jedi come back, but what kind of Jedi should come back? And it's connecting to the conversations about Rey rebuilding the new Jedi Order, but it's also talking about the evolution of the Jedi and pretty much, I guess it's more that it's based on the fact that the Jedi are an idea versus just an institution. So I mean, it's like if the structure is gone, because even in this episode they point out it's like, well, all these guys they're like, there's no master. There's like nothing to anchor
Anchor, right?
any of these, right? So I mean, it's sort of like a new concept, sort of, that even the canonical stories haven't really dealt with so much, because you always had somebody to anchor to it. You always had Luke, or you eventually now have Rey. But in this version of the story, you don't have any of that. You just basically have these people that are just, you know, without a home, I guess. It's probably the best way to put
Hmm.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the backdrop of all this is that the galaxy is in disarray, and you have all these different factions who are running around doing their own thing, and there's kind of a need for the Jedi to come back. But the question is like you said, Eric, is not so much that the Jedi need to come back, but like, what do these Jedi represent now? What are they? Before we knew they were keepers of the peace, not soldiers. Um, they were kind of attached to the government, kind of special branch, if you will, of the government. And now, if you bring them back, well, one, what government? Two, if they do come back, what's the order in a sense of, like you said, the hierarchy, the structure? You don't have a Yoda around anymore, anymore. You don't have Luke. You don't have an Obi-Wan. You don't have anybody who's really truly seasoned enough that you can maybe say this is the guy, this is the figurehead of it. I mean, maybe there is one particular character we'll probably get into, that could maybe, but again, you still have to figure out like what's the Jedi's direction now. Like if you were to bring them back, where do they go from here? And it's no different than when we look at some of our favorite TV shows of all time. Like you and I, Eric, we love the show Frasier, and Frasier had been off the airs for a while. But then Kelsey Grammer decided he wanted to bring Frasier back, and it's like, okay, well, Frasier was a spinoff of Cheers, and now he's coming back again, but it's not with the same cast. You don't have Daphne, you don't have Martin, you don't have Niles. What does this Frasier look like? What is is he still on the radio? Is he, has he moved on? Like what's his motivation? What's his direction now? And that's kind of where we are in this story. It's like, all right, we know the Jedi need to kind of come back, but where are they going?
Well, I also think, and you bring up a good point too, where you're talking about, the government, all this other stuff, right? Because in a lot of ways, what this story, excuse me, what this story has done, it mirrors a lot of what was in the original expanded universe. Then was alluded to basically in the Mandalorian, where pretty much the Empire has fallen, and now a bunch of warlords have taken over.
Hmm.
And of course, they they sort of skirt around it being the Empire, though. I mean, both the expanded universe and the Mandalorian was basically like different factions of the Empire. You still did have some warlords that were coming in, of course, but it was almost like some of the Empire guys became warlords, right? It was like all these Grand Admirals or Moffs or something that would just basically, like, they had their own command, obviously, and they would just, okay, well, we got this. They're cut off from the head, but they still had some regional control, and then they would just, that's basically what they would do. And then they were all trying to build power over each other to become the new head of the snake. Now that Palpatine and Vader were gone, it's like all these other officers basically were trying to fight to be the top dog. And then, of course, later on, Kylo comes around and he basically Snoke, and then they usurp the whole thing. But what makes this a little different is it's the same concept, but they don't really allude to the Empire too much. They talk about how these warlords have just basically divided up, and they have all their local control, and that's basically what they're dealing with. And of course, you have this villain that's basically grown from that. Seems to be a more central guy, but I'm sure we'll learn more about that in future episodes. But yeah, and I mean that's the other thing too, is that when you're dealing with this new threat, right? I mean, it doesn't have that same Empire Sith setup, even though they do kind of mention the Sith quite a bit in this. But this goes into what you're talking about, where it's like they have the opportunity to not repeat a bunch of stuff, right? You don't have another Palpatine, another Vader. It basically gives Star Wars a chance to come up with a new kind of villain, basically, and it gives it like another path that it can take. And I think that I see that this is a reason why the success of this is going to matter greatly, because if people latch onto this, and again, you have to take it a little bit with a grain of salt, though, because it is an animated series. It's kind of a niche animated series. I think it's something that could catch on, but it's not something that I think a lot of people are going to just turn to right away. Like, I'd be willing to bet that a lot of the casual fans don't even know this thing is out.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think, though, that no matter how it ends up doing marketing-wise, it does, like you brought up, represent, something. I mean, even Kara, right? She's not just like a female Luke Skywalker. I mean, there's like hero's journey style stuff in there. She's growing, she's learning, she's doing all that stuff, but she's carrying a burden bigger than herself. I mean, it's different from the Luke and even the Rey thing, really. It's sort of like, okay, with Luke and Rey, you basically had the Jedi Order was gone, but that tradition was still there. So I mean, like you said, you had a Obi-Wan, you had a Yoda there, you had Luke there for Rey. So you had a connection to the old Jedi Order. In this, you really don't. I mean, she could become kind of like a traditional Jedi, or she could become something different and new. So I think that that's important.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of borderlines Ahsoka's journey, because when
Yeah.
Ahsoka left the Jedi Order, she kind of had to forge her own path as far as like who she wanted to be and what she was going to be. I mean, people kept calling her a Jedi, but she would quickly remind people like, "Well, I'm not a Jedi. I'm no Jedi." Because in order to be a Jedi, you're beholden to rules, constructs, the code. There's so many things that just it's more than just picking up a lightsaber, and because you can use the Force, oh, you must be a Jedi. Mm-mm. And that's not what makes you a Jedi. And that's what's kind of illustrated here. Even in this, she's her whole thing is like, look, I'm trying to get my dad back, and he's an integral part about it, because he's like the last guy who knows how to build lightsabers. So there's a historical thing with him that lies within him, that is like, okay, if he dies, number one, he doesn't get to pass it down to her and anyone else who wants to be a Jedi. But then it also prevents the um, Sith-like character from General Nawam from becoming, or having that ability to do that as well. And
Right.
so these are synonymous with the Jedi. It's it's a part of their history. It's a part of their character. It's an extension of themselves, and that's how they've always been trained. Even when you go back to the old guard, when you look at Yoda and he's on Ilium, and like you can't just pick any crystal and stick it in a lightsaber. Like, no, you have to have a bond with it. It also has like a character. It feeds off of who you are as a person. So again, I like the fact that they're keeping some of the traditional components of the Jedi, but they're also doing it in a way where it's kind of like he's kind of like a human Huang in a way.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got that vibe too, and in fact, one of the things that's really cool about just this whole project, honestly, is like you said. I mean, they
Hmm.
can follow a lot of this stuff, right? But they could start to play a little bit with like some of the lightsaber mythology, Jedi philosophy, character archetypes, whatever. I mean, they don't have to worry about the actual timeline because it's not a canon based project.
Correct.
And
Right.
so, because of that, it's going to have two effects. Number one, it's going to feel like a fresher series because they don't have this like 50-year franchise, 50 years of like, canon and all these like rules and parameters or whatever. It's not really going to be weighing it down. But at the same time, and again, we're only one episode in. I mean, sure, you can go and blow through all 8 episodes if you want, but we're reviewing one at a time, and therefore we're watching one at a time. So, just what we've seen thus far, they're keeping enough of everything to make it feel like Star Wars. They're not doing what a lot of the Visions episodes did, where it becomes the point where, I mean, other than seeing an astromech droid or something or a lightsaber or whatever, it feels like kind of a foreign, no pun intended, like a foreign type of a thing, right? I mean, it's almost like, well, none of this really feels like Star Wars. They're just taking like Star Wars elements and putting it in some other project. But this actually feels grounded in Star Wars. However, it's a fresh take on it. So I mean, they're able to play with some of this stuff, and like you said, I mean, her father basically is like the sabersmith or whatever, which that's kind of a new thing. Think about it. Because up until now, it's like you
Hmm.
said, the Jedi would go out, they'd find their crystal or whatever, and they part of the Jedi training was to learn how to build a lightsaber. And a little bit of this is alluded to as well. It was a deleted scene in Return of the Jedi, but they did actually have a whole deleted scene where they show Luke building his green lightsaber, which,
Hmm.
a little bit of that was when, Vader's like, oh, so you constructed a new lightsaber and all that. Well, that's supposed to basically reflect back on this deleted scene. It just that stayed in the film. Luke actually building it didn't, but it just was showing like, hey, this is a skill that a lot of the Jedi had. Well, here they obviously don't. It's like this one guy is like all that's left that knows how to do this. So, I mean, I just think that they could do a lot of things. So you got Larkara, kind of like we'll just call her like sort of the female Luke, right? Um, and I mean, I don't know. I actually think that they're even, and we've alluded to this already. They're moving a little bit away. Like she doesn't feel there's stuff that's reminiscent of Luke and the prototypical hero's journey thing, but it
Hmm.
it feels different enough, right? Like where Ray, it almost felt like they were trying to make her a female Luke in a way, and then they overpowered her and all this other stuff. But with her, I don't know. I think she feels a little bit different. It was kind of like you said, there's sort of like an Ahsoka vibe to her too.
Yeah, her character, because she's not, like even if as it's been presented, her character is not setting out to, okay, I'm going to rebuild the Jedi Order. Like she realizes she has ability. She realizes that she has these gifts and things of that nature. However, her main thing is her father. Like, look, I'm just trying to get my dad back. That's her motivation. But that gives them the emotional weight to it.
Yeah.
Much like Luke, though, because Luke kind of got set on his journey because he lost everything. You know, Ambaru and Uncle Owen got, became smoldering skeletons in the desert. And Luke was like, look, there's nothing for me here. I mean, I wanted to go to the academy. My parents wanted me to stay and help them farm. I'm not gonna run this whole moisture farm by myself. I might as well go with you, Ben. I might as well just, you know, I was gonna go for one adventure as far as join the academy, which meant the Imperial Academy. But now it's like I might as well, just go on this whole Jedi thing. Now that I found out that my dad was once a Jedi and I kind of know something about it, hey, let's take a look over here and see what that's about. I mean, it's kind of
Yeah,
the same thing with her. It's like she's kind of loose. She hasn't lost her father yet, but he's gone, and so she's kind of like setting out so she doesn't lose everything. She's like, okay, I gotta find my dad, and so that gives it her emotional content, emotional weight that that's pushing and motivating her.
yeah. I also think that if you think in terms of like she doesn't have it all figured out yet. She's sort of
Right.
learning about the Jedi and everything as this
As she
goes
goes,
on.
yep.
Right. And so, I mean, I think that that's something that is that part's similar to Luke too, because Luke didn't really know, but at least he had Obi-Wan to,
Mm-hmm.
kind of point it out. Whereas, you know,
Papa whenever he wanted to.
yeah, I mean, she's kind of like, but I mean, I think that that's going to, reflect something a lot more fresh in this particular series because it is a little bit different. I mean, you almost have to think in terms too of like, imagine you were on the Skywalker farm and you're just like one of the, like one of the hands or whatever. It's like, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
your two bosses, and then the boss's kid like goes off. It's like what's happening to the moisture farm? It's. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that's one of those things that I often thought of because if you really think about Luke's thing, even though he might have felt it still would have been, I think, tempting in a way to just stay with what was familiar, even though it would have been insurmountable. Like, how am I going to do all this myself? But I don't know, I guess in the moment, he's just like, yeah, all right. I guess it sounds like a good idea. Plus, he was craving adventure too. So, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that that's another thing that's a little different too. I don't get Kara's like, I don't think she's trying to necessarily crave adventure, but at the same time, there's an objective, and she's definitely willing to, hey, I need to find my dad. These are the people that are going to be able to help. And then, of course, after her, you turn to Margrave Juro, who's like, he's kind of like the
Yep.
mentor and leader or whatever. He's like
Yeah,
that
he's kind of like
older,
the Obi-Wan.
yeah, yeah. He's guiding Carrie's guiding the others. And he's basically, you know, another one of those guys that's like attempting to rebuild the Jedi Order to a degree, or at least, but even he feels a little bit different, right? Because he he is a little bit of the continuity. So he does reflect a little bit of that, continuation of their like wisdom or knowledge or whatever. But I don't know. He's even sort of approached in a more fresh type of a way. It's hard to pinpoint it really because again, they gave I think ample time in this episode to flesh out some of these characters a little bit so you basically understood like you don't understand all the nuances, but you understand enough of them to basically understand their role in this particular version of the universe. And that's something that I
Mm-hmm.
think is really, really good too.
Yeah, I mean, he's the thing is that what I love about this is that overall there's a sense of discovery for everyone. I think that's the word I want to use. I think it's a sense of discovery for Kara. It's a sense of discovery for Margrave. It's a sense of discovery for the general. It's a sense of discovery because everybody's trying to figure out like, okay, how do we do our thing, and what's my take on it? What's my spin on it? Almost, and it's like we said before, are the Jedi going to be keepers of the peace? Or are they going to be running around trying to, keep peace in the galaxy and be ambassadors and do all that? Are they just going to be, or is there going to be a Jedi Order per se, in the sense of an order, or is it just
Right.
kind of a group of people that just kind of gets together, kind of like a club or something like that, or some weird fraternity or something? And we just kind of like, hey,
Or, I
we
mean,
have like-minded ideas, but we're not. There's no one that's really the head of anything. We just kind of come together and like, yeah, I think I kind of well, you do your thing, I'll do my thing. We'll see what shakes in the wash. It's kind of like, how does this even work, or what are we really even trying to do here?
yeah, I
And
mean,
I think that's what makes this so interesting.
you can maybe kind of like an Ocean's 11 or Italian Job or even the movie Sneakers, where it's like this little group of people that, I mean, one of the biggest ways, since it's an animated series, is kind of like Scooby Doo gang, right? Mystery Inc. It's like they're just like
Hmm.
this group of like 4 or 5 people that are like minded and have this goal or whatever. And it could very well be that there is no like Jedi Order per se. It's just like these guys are running around and maybe they're learning as they go. And I mean, that's where Gerald he sort of comes in the sense of he's representing the question of the legacy. You know, it's sort of like
Hmm.
he's basically the guy that's kind of that tie a little bit, and then because he's one part of it, and then Lazima, who is Kara's dad, he represents the other part, right? Because he represents the history. Um, he's like the sabersmith, you know, like the legacy
Hmm.
and whether or not the lightsaber actually has more of a sacred role. Like they're bringing that back a little bit. I mean, there's like so those two characters, Juro and Zima, basically represent two sides of that same like legacy Jedi Order coin. Whereas, yeah, the question is, do they start to introduce more of this, and then they do a hybrid, or do they just do their own thing? Or, I mean, it's really interesting to me to see where they're going with this.
Yeah. And then we have General Nuam, who was, the villain of the story. And he's even different because, unlike, people where, you remember the old, was it Rocky and Bullwinkle, where you had like the spies, well, you had no, that
Well, you had
was it
Natasha and
Boris and
yeah,
Natasha,
Boris and
but
Natasha. Yeah,
it was like another cartoon where you had the spies, and it was one white one and it was a black one. I
yeah,
can't
like
remember if
us.
that was. Oh, it never fails. uh, but no, I mean, they used to wear like these little fedoras. It's like these little minute little things, but they wore these trench coats,
I mean, like
and they had a
Spy
fedora
versus
hat.
Spy. That
Yeah,
was a black and a
and
white.
it was
They were like crows or something.
they were what?
They were like crows with little fedoras and trench coats.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, but and I'm using it as just like it's very clear. Like, okay, who's the good one, who's the bad one, just based off the coloring scheme, right? And um, with General Noir, it's he's posing the gray. He's kind of like, am I good? Am I bad? Am I anti-hero? Like, what am I really? And that's kind of a nuanced thing too, because it's a it's almost like a weird version of Kylo in a way.
Yeah, he
Because
did
you had
remind me of.
Kylo,
He reminded me of Kylo.
because Kylo, like you said, that's something we had never seen in Star Wars before, where someone is tempted by the light side who's on the dark. And so then now there's that struggle of like, okay, look, I'm trying to plunge myself deeper into this dark side because that's where I believe where the power is. Just this light, the light that's still in me won't allow me to go that far. And um, I think that's just an interesting uh, take, and especially like now when you kind of move it even further to a point where, hey, I'm a character, and you can't really tell am I good or bad.
Well, I think it's even more complicated by the fact that, the episode ends where he basically ignites a blue lightsaber and so wait,
Hmm.
he's like actually a Jedi, what's going on here? And I mean, I think that that's another thing in this universe that it's setting up is that you might have these Jedi themselves taking on different paths where they're not necessarily a Sith. We don't know yet if he's like technically a dark side user because they haven't really talked about the light side and the dark side so much yet. I'm curious on if they're going to get more into that as time goes on because right now it's just, the different factions. We're not even really sure what Nuam represents yet because it's kind of like an empire-ish kind of thing, but I don't remember the empire being specifically mentioned. It was just like the rise of all these warlords and stuff, which is another thing too, by the way. I thought that the way that they just set the series up, where they had that narrator and
Hmm.
they gave us basically the background, something that I wish a lot of Visions episodes would do. They gave us the background, and
Right.
then they drop us in, and the music, everything felt like everything just basically felt like Star Wars. Even though it was a vastly different version of it, it felt like Star Wars. And I also thought that this episode did a lot as far as introducing us to the world and then also making us want to watch the second episode. Because, I mean, if you think about it, those are the two things really that the debut episode of a series should do. It should hook you, and then it should make you want, to see second episode, or the subsequent episodes, I should say. But at the same time, you should understand what's going on, where you are, the context of the story. It's basically like kind of a setup. And I think that that works out really well. But I also think that in terms of setting this up for good versus evil, the villain versus the hero, they're doing a good job of giving you a protagonist and antagonist because one of the overused things is what they started doing with some of the superhero things where it's like there really wasn't a definite protagonist or antagonist. You just basically had a bunch of anti-heroes and one would be more on the
Hmm.
side of law and the other would be more on the side of crime, but really they were all flawed and this whole like getting away from the white knight, or whatever. But
Hmm.
I think that that's one of the things that's appealing about the original trilogy is the fact that it was a very classic good versus evil story. The white hats and the black hats, kind of like what you were alluding to with the spy versus spy thing,
Hmm.
where you had definitive good and definitive bad, and they weren't trying to do this whole like shades of gray, reality kind of thing, right? It was like classic storytelling. And I think that what they're doing in this series is they're giving us a little bit of both because where you're talking about specifically the Force and the Jedi and everything, you don't necessarily have like Jedi good, Sith bad kind of a thing. We don't really know where this is going because the guy that's been set up as this villain now appears like he might be a Jedi. So it's like, okay, well, what's the story with that? But at the same time, they are giving you a definitive good guy, bad guy. So I think that that's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, some people have different, views on the ambiguity of is he good, is he bad? Um, and I think that's just sometimes, it's indicative of life because, some people are just inherently like, I'm just a good person. I'm always going to do the right thing. And then there's people who, as we know, that no matter what, it's like for whatever reason, they get called to just do the dark stuff. They just want to, lie, steal, cheat, kill, all those different things. But then there's like, the everyday person sometimes where some days, just depending on your mood or what's going on or the situation. I mean, you may generally and be a good person, but you may do bad things here and there because of the situation or whatever mood you might be in or whatever has happened to you. And so that's what I mean when I say, that little bit of gray.
Yeah, but here's
Um,
my point though. And this is
mhm.
why it's something that's I'm just saying it's being overused in storytelling. So
Yeah, I
somewhere
get it.
along the line, they decided, hey, let's make some of the storytelling be a little bit more indicative of real life. Problem is, everybody does that now. And now it's
Yeah.
just, it's like, look, we're not watching documentaries here. That's why you have fictitious stories. You could do that. The idea, one of the things that George Lucas had said, and this is why he liked the classic storytelling thing, is he was
Clear
trying
lines.
not to so much reflect life, he was trying to give people something to aspire to. And that's why you tell stories of like your Superman and all these guys where they're the ultimate good, right? I mean, it's not so much that you're trying to say this is a realistic thing. It's like this is what you're trying to aspire to. Or you
Hmm.
have it to where you can have, like, okay, these guys are obviously very good. These guys are obviously bad. Now, of course, the reality is in Star Wars, it's so vast, there's really room to tell multiple stories like with an Andor kind of a thing, right? Where they're showing a little bit of the seedy side of the rebellion, you know, that hey, they're
Well,
not
yeah.
necessarily the white hat guys that we all thought they were because, it's kind of a realistic war story. That fits. But you don't have to make every project fit into that kind of a bubble. You could do more like a New Hope, Empire, and all that to where it's more of a classic storytelling where you have the classic good guy, bad guy.
Well, yeah. I think you have to. So the consolidate it all. I think you can do both. It's just that who do you choose to do them with, right? So you
Yeah,
have
you're
to have
talking
a
about like
clear,
based on stories
clear,
or characters, right?
clear good guy, clear bad guy. But your Han Solo, he's kind of on the fringe
Yeah, that's true. You
because
could actually have,
he's a
like, you could
smuggler,
throw a
and that's
character.
kind of an
Yeah,
illegal thing.
right.
But he's good hearted. You see what I'm saying? Like, so
Yeah, well, I mean, but
you
that goes into
have.
that classic Aspire to, right? He's a smuggler with the heart of gold. He's the guy that he was like kind of doing the ambiguous thing, and then the ultimate good guys won him over, and then he does the right thing in the end. It's kind of like
Mhm.
that whole thing, and that's fine. And I like the fact that this is getting back to that kind of storytelling again, to where it's not just another, hey, let's make everybody morally ambiguous kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Given
It's
our
almost like
chatters,
everyone's bisexual.
right, right. So Dragonfly says, I hate Shades of Grey. LOL. Hondo is such a middle road character. Dude does some bad stuff, but helps Ezra. Yeah, and that's kind of
Yeah.
like the thing. Ed says, love me
Love
some.
Hondo.
Hey,
Yep, me too.
Hondo. Yep. Hondo's awesome. He's a really good character. And then Absolute
Love
Good
Hondas
balanced
too.
by Absolute Evil for Dragonfly. So yeah, I mean that's basically the thing, and that's true too. If you do go into that more classic storytelling, which is why it's a classic thing, is that if you do have like the ultimate good, then you got to do ultimate evil too, right? So
Hmm.
you you can't have too many ambiguous characters in there, but having a few makes things interesting because it gives you a little bit of tension, like the Han Solo thing. It's kind of like, guy gonna just be selfish? Is he gonna turn his back on them, or is he gonna help? I mean, they tried to do that a little bit in the sequels with Finn, where he was, running from everything, and then he finally decides, you know what? I got to stop running. I got to start committing to something. That's what he does.
Hmm.
But the nice thing about it is this is setting it up to where you have some of that, but it's still framed within the more classic framework, which I think is a really good thing about this whole thing. Now, the other question comes because usually, whenever we talk about these things, we always talk about the animation style. And
Hmm.
I mean, I really like the animation style in this. It has that like there's
I
a
do
little
too.
it's like a 2D, like a 3D 2D thing. It's like some of it feels like the 3D animation, but it's very much a 2D classic anime style that I think really lends itself to this.
It often reminds me of the shorts that we used to watch,
Yeah.
the Star Wars Clone Wars.
Yes.
That's what it reminds me of.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um so I mean I thought the animation was good, the music's good. Again, it's something that we touched on earlier. I think the fact that it's non-canon is also very good. There's a lot of times where I think everybody hungers for canonical material, and it's like, okay, well, where in the Star Wars canon does this fall and all that? But I actually think that this has helped by it being outside of, and I think that because of that, they can explore things. And you and I brought this up, even I think when we did the last season of Visions. One of the benefits of Visions is they could use that as like a guinea pig. They could test out different concepts because if the concept doesn't work, it doesn't ruin the proper canon.
Hmm.
And if it does work, they can go, oh, sweet, it worked. Let's, take that now and, either canonize that or take that concept and apply it to canonical characters. So I think they could do the same thing here. They could really play with this story arc because now it's not just a one and done. They got this 8-episode story arc. It's like, hey, let's see what it does. Let's see if, and it'll be interesting to see like how much they play with things to see like if it works or not.
Yeah. I mean, that's the joy of moving away from the Skywalker saga, is that you're not beholden to a lot of things. You kind of have the freedom to kind of forge your own path. Um, Another thing I just really enjoy about this is, like I said earlier, is that um, it's kind of like Star Wars is giving itself and I think Ted Adam Green said this to begin with, is that it's a fresh start and you can pretty much lay out what you want it to be, and it's a whole new thing.
Yeah.
Like you said, in the first 30 minutes, you kind of got the story, you kind of know where we're at, what we're doing, and I think that's really cool and and clear, because that's one thing. Like, even with the sequel trilogy, we didn't always know, okay, where are we going with this? It kind of sometimes took a while for it to get its feet up under it. Whereas, like, now it's like, okay, in this we have a general understanding of where the world is, where we are in the world, what's happening. Here are major players. Okay, go. And now I think that's when you have that type of structure, it allows for a better enjoyment.
Well, yeah. And I mean, the other thing it does is if you think about it, especially if this is successful, it's going to put a lot of pressure on the Ray movie if it ever gets made to deliver
Hmm.
something equally thoughtful, right? Because
Right.
they're kind of playing in that same sandbox timeline wise, So
Hmm.
I mean, it's there's a lot of things they could do, right? And I mean, there's just like a lot of lessons that they can learn too, right? Like let's let the Jedi evolve a little bit, or don't recreate the prequel order because although you can make the argument story wise, it could make sense. It wouldn't. I don't know. I don't think it would lend itself. It would lend itself more to recycling older stories. I think.
But one thing I will say though about this is we haven't touched on is how they're planning on um, defining using the Force.
Well, it's like I basically touched on it a little bit earlier. but all I said about it was that they didn't really do it yet. Um, I'm wondering, you know, as this unfolds, because we have like 7 more episodes to go,
Hmm.
which for once I'm actually looking forward to watching and reviewing them. I mean, I could say that I was kind of that way with the last season of Visions, especially. Last season of Visions actually was really good. Like I remember 2 was kind of the bridge, right? Because they had all those animation studios from all over the world doing them, and they were
Hmm.
more hit than miss. But I remember it was primarily with season 3. I remember you and I were like, wow, they really sort of found their footing or something because every episode was good. But the difference is they were all one and done. They were single episode story arcs, and I mean, yeah, you did have sure the Ninth Jedi actually had a sequel story, from season 1, and there was a couple of things like that. There was another one too. They did another sequel, but I think that one of the important things to note here is that this is the first time that you're getting a serialized version of Visions, essentially. So I think we're going to find out more about the Force and how they're handling the Force in subsequent episodes. Again, I mean, this thing is basically an
Hmm.
introduction. Dragonfly says the animation studio's production IG, pointed that out in the beginning. They make great stuff and are a branch off of Tatsunoko, who famously did Speed Racer and Gotcha Man, which is why I dig the anime.
Hmm. It does have a speed racer vibe to it. You know what? I
It does.
never thought about
It
that, but you know what?
does. Yeah.
It definitely does.
Yeah. So I mean, I could see definitely the influences there. And again, it's also good. This is probably worth noting too that they got a good animation studio to do this because if it was one of the more questionable
Obscure.
ones, yeah, where they did some obscure, like weird thing, and they decide to make some bizarre concept or whatever, then yeah, this thing would fall flat because you'd basically have like eight
Yeah, it could take you
episodes.
out of it.
Right, exactly. Or
Yeah, it could take you out of it.
even if it didn't take you out of it, it would be more like you wouldn't necessarily care about it, because there's like a lot of stuff where we're
Hmm.
kind of like, okay, well, the animation is stunning, the music's cool, and I don't know what I'm watching. That's the problem. It's almost like they try to make it, you know, a little too weird. 'Cause you can,
Yeah, people are so hell bent on being different that it becomes weird.
yeah. I mean, and I think that that's the biggest issue in general with stuff like this is that there is that temptation to make it so crazy and so outlandish because you can do so much that there's that danger of not using enough restraint, which is the flip side of this argument that we're making. Because on one hand, we're saying, hey, you can take some chances now. You can expand the Jedi. You can, you know, maybe give the villain a new philosophy or something. There are things that you can do, but at the same time, it's almost so wide open that you have the temptation of doing more than you probably should. So far, it looks like
Yeah.
they got that balance, right? It still feels very much in the Star Wars universe, but yet it feels completely different all at the same time. And that's a bravo to the studio because we're 1 30-minute episode in, guys. You know, I mean, sure, I could cheat and watch all of them, and then get that context. But neither one of us want to do that because we want to be able to experience each episode on its own and then take it in. Whereas the problem is, especially on a serialized thing, it wouldn't have been such a big deal if we had done that on the other ones because, again, they were just single episode story arcs. But if you watch all of this, obviously you'll know where it was going, and that's going to color your viewpoint, good or bad. Because how many times have we reviewed a series where we're kind of like, okay, well, we hated episode 4 until we saw episode 7, which made episode 4 make a lot more sense, and now, we love episode 4, that kind of thing. So you have to be careful. Dragonfly says Ronan and Ninth Jedi are the two that got 2 episodes. Yeah. Yep. The 2 sequel. I thought there was one more, though. I guess I could, but I thought there was like another one that got 2. But it really doesn't matter. This is the one that got made into the series. So, I mean, this is the one that, we're dealing with. And who knows? Maybe if this is successful, they might spin off the Ronin. Because again, I mean, I think of the 2, the Ninth Jedi makes more sense. But I would still like to see the Ronin. Especially if they made the Ronin make a little bit more. Because again, the character's really cool. The world in a lot of ways is really cool, but they have to make it feel a little bit more Star Wars-ish and not like some 17th century samurai movie. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's very avant-garde. That's the other problem too. Maybe if they told the story a little bit more straight, it would be better. I don't know. All right. So what are you rating this thing?
I'm gonna give it a 7.
Yeah. I think that's where I'm gonna land on it too. And we're not grading on a curve, by the way. Like we used to do, like, there's the Visions rating, and then it's kind of like,
right,
well, Visions
right.
It's an 8, but really it's like a 4 in reality. So it's like, I mean, we're not doing that. We're actually, this is on the up and up. These are the ratings that we would give anything basically. So I mean, a solid 7. What are you looking forward to most for episode 2?
Just great expansion of the story. Take me on a journey. Show me some of what you have in mind. I mean, like I'm really just open to see, like, okay, kind of once I see more like how the story is going to, how you're trying to flesh the story out, then I'm like, okay, I might be able to give a little bit more. But it's still in this inception, so I don't want to, rush the process.
Yeah, I mean,
Rush
right.
things out together.
You don't want to add a ton of baggage to it. I mean, I guess if I were to go for specificity, I would just say I want a little bit more explanation on, like, the whole warlord governmental situation. What's going on there? Like, where does Guam kind of fit into the general hierarchy, I guess, of the
No pun
villainry?
intended.
It's right. Um, Maybe a little bit more on the force and some of where it falls. Again, like you, I'm on board for the ride. These are not criticisms. This isn't like, okay, I must have this from the next episode, or I'm just going to, it's going to color my whole attitude toward the series. None of that. I'm on board for the ride. It's like, just give me the good story and I'm good. But, because some of the things that I might want from episode 2, I might not get till episode 4. And maybe there's a reason for that. So I'm open to that. But I mean, I guess that's just what I'm looking forward to in subsequent episodes. Would probably be the best way to describe it. Ted basically says it's an 11 out of 10. Yeah, the Ronaldo award goes to. Remember, Ronaldo was the one that loved Vision.
Yes.
But I mean, I could see that too. I mean, I'm giving it a 7 mainly because it's really good, and it's definitely worthy of that. But it's not Maul Shadow Lord level. That's like, we were given that show like 8s, 9s, 10s like the whole time. But I mean, it could get that way, and I'm not saying it's bad or anything like that. I'm actually really into this, and I'm looking forward to reviewing the rest of it. I wasn't so sure because I remember the countdown to, we're sitting there like looking at it, and I'm thinking like, oh man, August 5th, that's coming up. It's like, oh man, I got like 8 weeks of a Visions review to do. I wonder how good of an experience this is going to be. But I'm happy to say, and it seems like you're on the same page, that it's like, look, this is actually really good. This is what we wanted. On board to review the rest of this stuff. I'm completely good with it. All right, you got anything final you want to say about this?
No, just come back next week so we can talk about it some more.
Yeah, that's basically what's going to happen, you guys. One of the nice things for us, especially, when we're doing these show reviews, there is no mystery, barring some. Now, I know that I told Grandmaster, and we probably will do this. I forgot the exact dates already. I'd have to go back to Discord and look. But D23 is going to hit. It's going to be like a lot of stuff. By the way, Grandmaster dropped like a ton of stuff on our Discord, and it's really good stuff, too. If it wasn't, I'd be honest and say, that's all right. If you guys are really deep into this stuff, go ahead and check it out. But no. The last drop that he made was just really, really cool. Really good. So it is worth you guys going to check a lot of his messages over the last like 3 or 4 days. And oh, look at this. Grandmaster joins us. He sneaks up on us sometimes. He watches. It says, don't forget D23 this Friday. All right. Well, then what that means, we'll see how this shakes out. Because we could do one of two things. At the time, I had theorized that we would just take a week and not do the Visions review and do a D23 wrap-up instead. There's 2 other possibilities. I don't really want to combine them because that'll mess with the algorithm and, people won't know. And then, of course, they watch this 10 years from now, and instead of just watching episode 2 or whatever, they would have this whole D23 thing attached to it, which would make no sense at that point. So it should stay a separate show. So Daryl and I will talk about it. We'll figure out. We'll do one of 2 things. We'll either take the break from Visions and knock out this D23, or we'll do the Visions show, but maybe we'll do 2 shows. We'll do a second D23 wrap-up show. See how that ends up. So we'll see. But I'm glad the Grandmaster just saved me the trouble of having to go look in our Discord. That's a bad thing. I check it every day, but it's nice that I was able to tell you guys all that stuff. So, I guess there is a little bit of a mystery. We'll either do 2 shows or we'll do the D23 thing. We'll see what happens. Because we might get a Starfighter trailer, by the way. We might. There's like a bunch of stuff that's out that could happen, and it might be earth-shattering stuff. Just keep your eye on our Discord. Some of our social medias, too. We'll probably announce stuff. And you guys know the deal. Besides liking the video, which is very important to us because the algorithm likes it, we like it. So hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button because we are trying to grow the channel, as everybody knows. But if you do subscribe, like look, today we ended up going on 8:30 instead of 8. Hit that notification bell so you'll always know when we're live. Because unfortunately, we don't do this full time, so sometimes we have to move the show. If it was like, if we just uploaded every week and it wasn't a live show, it wouldn't be a big deal. But because we do this live, obviously that becomes a thing. All right, so next week, either D23, Visions Episode 2, maybe both. You guys will just have to watch to find out. So with that, I'm Eric Bansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.